My name's Lance, and I've chosen to explore the concept of stereotyping and its influence on our perception of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I will be using the Don Featherstone short film Barbecue Area to illustrate how Australian society has constructed negative, all-encompassing stigmas about Indigenous Australians such as alcoholism and idiocy. These stereotypes combat any progress Australia has made eradicating the disadvantages experienced by First People. Stereotypes negatively misrepresent minorities. The misconception that Indigenous Australians are unintelligent widens the education divide between them and white Australians. According to researchers Young, Craven and Alley, Indigenous students experience disadvantages in both academic performance and self-concept. This is due to the common belief that Aboriginal students are inferior to or intellectually impaired in comparison to their non-Indigenous peers. A teacher in the Northern Territory, Neil Harrison, noted that some of his Indigenous students had been attending a school for 10 years and still could not read or write. He states that frustrated teachers are quick to assume that the lack of progress is at fault of Aboriginal children who do not value education and do not want to learn. This stereotype hinders teachers from achieving success in the schooling of their Indigenous students and furthers the education divide between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students. Harrison and Selwood explore this anecdote further by suggesting Indigenous children acquire these skills in ways different to mainstream schooling, and it is the teacher's responsibility to trial various stages to educate their students rather than give up on them. The stereotype that all Indigenous students do not value education contributes to a society where not all people have equal opportunity to learn and be taken seriously, as does the prejudiced belief that all Indigenous Australians are struggling alcoholics. According to an Australasian Science article, Aboriginal people were denied legal access to alcohol by the Australian government until 1960. By 1977, a government inquiry had been released saying that alcohol is the biggest threat to Aboriginal people's well-being. It was not safely introduced into Aboriginal communities, so many Aboriginal people have been found to misuse it. However, the assumption that an Indigenous Australian is suffering from alcoholism purely because they are Indigenous is demeaning and derogatory. Indigenous Australians are at greater risk of alcoholism, but this is the fault of white Australians. This clip from the short film Barbecue Area highlights the stereotype that all Indigenous Australians struggle with alcoholism by subverting the perceived roles of white and Indigenous Australians. It suggests that white people, which are intended to represent Indigenous Australians, are nothing more than useless, uneducated drunks.
A far cry from this image of white people, the one we see so often in the streets of our cities. What brings these poor people to this level? Why do they drag themselves through the sewers of our society? I tried to find answers to these questions, but sadly, everyone here declined to be interviewed. So I put this question to the minister. Is it fair of us to expect white people to improve? Do they want to change?
Yes. And here in my department, we're doing everything we can to help them. We've created 32 new jobs in the last year. We've built 7 new houses.
But what if they're happy the way they are?
It'd be morally wrong for us to leave them like that. We've got to do everything we can to help these people take their place in society. And I think most white people are happy with what we're doing for them.
But has the government tried to find out what white people want?
Why? I mean, we're the government. It's our job to make decisions about what these people want and give it to them.
It's a waste of money. We pour money into white people and what happens? They either end up drunk or in jail, or both.
These stereotypes stem from a history of colonial oppression and abuse. If we continue to feed into these negative stereotypes of Indigenous people, they will never receive equal opportunity to be productive members of a predominantly non-Indigenous Australian society, as they won't be taken seriously. European colonisation created the grounds to socially and culturally disadvantage Australia's First Peoples through the blatant discrimination and condemnation of their way of living. This prejudice is carried on into today, seen in the plethora of negative stereotypes assumed of Indigenous Australians. If we do not work to rid modern Australian society of these stereotypes, Aboriginal Australians will never achieve equality. Thank you.